Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, artists, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. Visit www.redaphid.com. It's Wednesday, May 7th, and it's 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Don't forget to call your Congress and tell them to support H.R. 5842 and H.R. 5843 to end DEA raids in medical marijuana states and to legalize personal possession of marijuana. The number is 202-224-3121. If you have a product that you would like to market to the cannabis community, you can advertise on the Daily Audio Stash. Your ad will be focused on exactly the customer base you're seeking out, the thousands of responsible cannabis consumers who download and listen to this show. Our listeners are educated consumers who want to support the businesses that support the growing truth about cannabis, and we deliver the advertising freedom you won't find on radio, TV, or print ads. To advertise on the Daily Audio Stash, send us an email at stash@norml.org. Wednesday is Cannabis Science Day on the Stash, and coming up after the news, we're separating the stems of propaganda from the buds of truth with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Today, Dr. Mitch and I discuss yet another attempt to falsely link marijuana to aggression. Seriously, do these scaremongers even know any potheads? Cannabis Carry brings us our musical break this Hemp Day Hump Day with a New York group called Mudville and their simply named song, Stoned. And I wrap things up with another listen to the Global Marijuana March from this weekend from all around the country. Today we're headed to Philadelphia with Ken Wolski of Philly NORML, Josh Schimberg down in Austin with Texas NORML, and back east to New York City with Rob Robinson of New York NORML. It really is about the grassroots, people, and your local NORML chapter is the place to start ending adult marijuana prohibition. Speaking of local activism, I want to feature the best from the marijuana marches this weekend. So we're starting another Pass the Stash contest where you could win a DVD from Suburban Noise Records rappers King Spade. Stay tuned for details later in the podcast. Welcome to the show. Load up your Wesley pipes and sit back with your favorite strain. This is your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Health Canada may charge more for poor medical cannabis. Sheila Fraser, the Federal Auditor General, yesterday released her latest report on Ottawa's management of its programs and spending. As in the past, the Auditor General found many areas in which government spending was excessive or lacked proper oversight. The federal government is charging too much for passports, doesn't know what to charge for medical marijuana, and may not be charging enough for some other fees it collects. Yesterday's report indicated Ottawa collected $1.9 billion in fees on everything from issuing passports to granting licenses to manufacture drugs. The money represents a small fraction of the more than $200 billion collected every year in taxes and duties. The auditors discovered Health Canada is probably undercharging Canadians who are allowed to buy marijuana for medical purposes. Health Canada charges $5 a gram of dried marijuana or $20 for a packet of 30 marijuana seeds. Some compassion clubs, which try to assist those who need marijuana to ease chronic pain, charge twice as much for similar amounts. Health Canada plans to recalculate its charge. Yeah, but there's just one problem with this analysis. The marijuana being supplied by Health Canada is of very poor quality compared to that which is sold in the compassion clubs. It's only worth half of what the quality marijuana is worth. Health Canada maintains a monopoly supply on government medical marijuana. The herb is grown 500 feet below the earth in an abandoned zinc and copper mine in Flin Flon, Manitoba. I've spoken with Philippe Lucas from the Vancouver Island Compassion Society about this issue, and he tells me that not only is the Flin Flon weed quite swaggy, but also there are concerns about its safety after being grown where so many harsh mining chemicals had been used. Health Canada needs to open up the production of marijuana to the many excellent independent growers in Canada. British Columbia itself could probably manufacture enough high-quality marijuana to supply the whole country. But here is where the prohibition rub comes in. Because there is a lucrative black market, both in Canada and the U.S., for high-quality marijuana, the price of marijuana is artificially inflated by prohibition risk. BC growers want to divert their strains to the top dollar buyers, not to some government that will fix the price and create many bureaucratic headaches. And the government must either grow poor quality weed that can remain low cost and out of competition with BC bud, or raise quality and prices to match the black market. Government can't charge less for good medicine, or else people will purchase it and resell it on the black market for the margin. Come on now. $5, $10, $15 for a gram of weed? $20 to $50 for a packet of seeds? Can you name any other consumer agricultural product that demands such exorbitant pricing?
Yes, tobacco due to high taxes, and saffron, which grows in few places during a short season and must be harvested by hand by picking the individual stigma off the flower.
What do you think marijuana would cost if it were completely legal and farmers could grow acres of it outdoors? Making sense of student drug testing, why educators are saying no. A new report from the American Civil Liberties Union, Washington, D.C. The White House Office of National Drug Control Policy is conducting the latest in a series of regional summits designed to convince local educators to begin drug testing students randomly and without cause, a policy unsupported by the available science and opposed by leading experts in adolescent health, including the Academy of Pediatrics, the National Education Association, the Association of Addiction Professionals, and the National Association of Social Workers. ACLU Legislative Counsel Jesselyn McCurdy said, quote, "Subjecting students to unsubstantiated searches flies in the face of the values taught in our nation's classrooms. Random drug testing is not only ineffective in preventing teen drug use, it's counterproductive. We know that the threat of random drug testing can discourage students from participating in the very activities proven to reduce drug use, such as high school sports. It marginalizes already at-risk teens and undermines trust between students and educators." End quote. While the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that random drug testing of students involved in extracurricular activities does not violate the Constitution, many state constitutions provide stronger privacy protections, disallowing such testing schemes. For example, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court found random drug testing of students unconstitutional under state law in 2003, and the Washington Supreme Court most recently declared it unconstitutional in March of this year. In addition to exposing schools to costly litigation, studies have found that suspicionless drug testing is ineffective in deterring student drug use. The first large-scale national study on student drug testing in 2003 found no difference in rates of student drug use between schools that have drug testing programs and those that do not. In addition, the results of a 2-year trial published last November in the Journal of Adolescent Health concluded random drug testing targeting student athletes did not reliably reduce past month drug use, and in fact produced attitudinal changes among students that indicate new risk factors for future substance use. 75 students arrested in San Diego State University drug bust. Dozens of San Diego State University students were arrested and 6 fraternities were suspended after a sweeping drug investigation found that some fraternity members openly dealt drugs and one even sent a mass text message advertising cocaine, authorities said Tuesday. A 5-month investigation, prompted by a cocaine overdose death last year, led to the arrests of 96 people, 75 of them San Diego State students. A second drug death occurred while the investigation went on. 29 people were arrested early Tuesday in raids at 9 locations, including the Theta Chi fraternity, where agents found cocaine, ecstasy, and 3 guns. 18 of them were wanted on warrants for selling to undercover agents. 2 kilograms of cocaine were seized in all, along with 350 ecstasy pills, marijuana, psychedelic mushrooms, hash oil, methamphetamine, illicit prescription drugs, several guns, and at least $60,000 in cash, authorities said. The district attorney's office said search warrants were served in San Diego and suburban La Mesa, including the Theta Chi fraternity house and several apartments. A member of Theta Chi sent out a mass text message to his faithful customers stating that he and his associates would be unable to sell cocaine while they were in Las Vegas over one weekend, according to the DEA. The text promoted a cocaine sale and listed the reduced prices. San Diego State suspended Theta Chi and 5 other fraternities Tuesday, pending a hearing on evidence gathered during the investigation. Members of at least 3 fraternities were arrested, according to law enforcement. Investigators infiltrated 7 fraternities in the course of the probe. The undercover probe, dubbed Operation Sudden Fall, was sparked by the cocaine overdose death of a student in May 2007, authorities said. As the investigation continued, another student from Mesa College died February 26th of a cocaine overdose at an SDSU fraternity house, the DEA said. Okay, first of all, anyone who would send out a mass text message advertising to sell cocaine should have his scholarships and grant money revoked and given to a student with some sense. Advertising one's felonies through traceable mass electronic communication doesn't sound like the work of someone with stellar SATs. However, are 75 arrests really required here? As we know, every one of those students, if convicted, will lose all federal student financial aid. They will have a drug conviction on their records for life as they enter the job marketplace. Surely not all 75 of these arrests are for the kingpins of this enterprise. There was no violence involved. Isn't this a bit of overkill? Look, nobody wants college kids dying from cocaine overdoses. One of the reasons we lobby so hard for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is that it removes marijuana from the cohort of really dangerous illegal drugs and provides young people with the safest choice of recreational intoxicant. It's sad that 2 kids died from cocaine, but how many students every year die from alcohol overdoses? When are the feds initiating a massive undercover probe to root out underage drinking on campuses?
Now it's time to play Pass the Stash, where you can win cool prizes from NORML.
Hey Stashers, it's time for another great Pass the Stash contest. This time I've got a great video from Suburban Noise Records artist King Spade. Their new DVD, Throw Your Spades Up Live at the Key Club, features Richter and D-Loc busting some hardcore flow in a video featuring 19 of their best raps, including Spaded, Faded, and Jaded, Drunken to Club, and Smokin' Doja. All you have to do to win is send me an email at stash@norml.org with just 2 things. A picture from your local global marijuana march. I'm mostly looking for a huge crowd shot in the streets so that we can show the world our massive support for ending adult marijuana prohibition, or the most interesting, funny, or sexy picture of a marijuana activist, or a sign from the marijuana march. And one of the most creative chants you use during the marijuana march. For example, hey, hey, ho, ho, prohibition's got to go, or I smoke pot and I like it a lot, but something newer and more creative. That's it. Just a picture and a chant. However, don't send me links to pictures stored on PhotoBucket or Flickr. I don't have time to scan through them all and recopy them. Just attach the pictures as a JPEG, and please, no more than 3 pictures, and send it to stash@norml.org. I'll announce the winner next Friday, and you can remain anonymous if you like, and you'll soon receive your DVD copy of King Spade in the mail. So thanks for listening, and thanks for playing Pass the Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 12 states today, and THCF has medical clinics in 6 of those states. Our physicians help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help them obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at www.hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Once again, we're joined by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Associate Professor from the State University of New York at Albany, working in the psychology department there, and one of the leading researchers on marijuana and other substances. So, Doctor, welcome to our show again.
Pleasure to be back.
All right. So this weekend, of course, was the Global Marijuana March. What was happening up there in the Albany, New York area?
We had a couple of nice get-togethers here, and I gave a big talk on the second on the unparalleled evils of marijuana, which was very well attended. In fact, some of my faculty colleagues even showed up and learned a thing or two about the history of prohibition and how some of the negative consequences of marijuana that they may have learned in junior high are out-and-out lies.
How does that work for you, being a professor there and working with your colleagues? They all know that you do this work on marijuana. Do you get a ribbing sometimes from them?
It's funny, it only comes up once in a while. So last year when my first marijuana and depression article came out, it hit the front of the Times-Union, the local paper here, and nobody said a word to me till I was standing in the copy room making some copies, and a colleague said, "Oh, marijuana doesn't cause depression, just the word we need to spread." So I think they don't mind ribbing me, but as long as I get my work done and they can get their work done, it's all in good fun.
Did they have a big rally up there? Did they have a bunch of marchers?
There was one march, and it was very well attended, really a wonderful, nice group of folks, and it was just a pleasure to see.
Well, once again, and I've been collecting all of the news stories from the march from over this weekend, and aside from a couple of incidences, I saw one incident in Athens, Greece, where they were having some problems. They had to bring out the tear gas and such, but by and large, I would say about 98% of the cities out there, there was peaceful marches, no problems, no arrests. It just goes to show that, all of this talk about marijuana and aggression and people getting crazy on the killer demon reefer, there's a lot of lie to that.
Well, in fact, this new paper that Tom Denson and I have coming out next month suggests that everybody knows this, and now we've really got more data to prove it. It's funny because the story behind this paper is kind of an interesting one, and most folks don't think marijuana causes aggression anymore, but it still seems to show up time and again, and especially on some of the NIDA and ONDCP websites. So Tom and I gathered these data from a big survey of folks, and some previous work suggested that adolescents who were kind of aggressive also smoked marijuana, but it never really addressed the idea that they got aggressive right after smoking marijuana, and it never took into account the fact that these folks use a whole lot of other drugs. So in literally the biggest study to date on this topic, Tom and I not only asked, have you done these aggressive things, slap and kick and punch and things like that, but did you do them after drinking alcohol, and did you do them after smoking marijuana? And no surprise to any of our listeners, it's markedly less likely that you do any of these things after smoking marijuana than you would after drinking alcohol. And in fact, I had just finished up a really large grant from NIAAA on alcohol and aggression, and basically showing that people not only are more aggressive after drinking alcohol to people who provoke them, they're actually even aggressive to people who are innocent, who do just little minor things later on. So that's clearly the drug we need to focus on when we talk about aggression. But more importantly, when Tom and I looked at aggressive acts and took into account hard drug use, particularly the stimulants, cocaine, amphetamine, and methamphetamine, the link between marijuana and aggression completely disappears. another interesting finding of this is that the widely established differences between men and women on aggression also disappear if you take alcohol into account. So it seems like alcohol really is the villain in the aggression story, but I obviously don't want to go back to alcohol prohibition.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's nice to see that scientists are spending money and time to verify things that I learned from 15 years of playing in bars. The alcohol.
It's amazing how much time we spend just confirming what basically everybody knows. And the funny thing was, this is not the first journal we sent this paper to. The first journal we sent it to said, oh, come on, nobody thinks marijuana causes aggression. And they bounced it right away. And I was frustrated because, of course, no scientists think so, but we still find it on, certain websites for people who think America should be drug-free. And I just wanted to add to the argument that marijuana, in fact, does not increase aggression, especially in, adults.
Yeah, and if you check out the media, especially when you're looking over across the pond in the UK, we get a lot of those stories about the super skunk and how it causes aggression. And it's good to see that we have one more study to debunk these kind of reefer madness lies.
Well, in fact, anybody who believes this obviously has never used the plant. And, you look time and again, and what you find is, no, marijuana doesn't cause aggression, but maybe there are some aggressive people who smoke pot. Clinically, I found just in therapy work, you do find some folks who are pretty hostile who discover that marijuana may help them take the edge off, but that hardly has the causality in the right direction. In fact, we're talking about aggressive people who turn to marijuana to become less aggressive. Obviously, it's not the treatment of choice. We've got wonderful 12-session programs to decrease hostility in anybody who's feeling a problem with managing their anger, but cannabis certainly is not contributing to this problem.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because my wife has this peculiar addiction. She watches the Dr. Phil show. And one of the shows they had on the other day featured a young man. I think he was 17. And, of course, nobody's going to recommend that 17-year-olds smoke marijuana. But he was on the show because the parents were concerned about his marijuana smoking. And as the show went on to illustrate the problems this young man had, his mother and father were estranged. The father committed adultery, had anger issues, beat the kid. The kid was lashing out, knocked his father out, assaulted him. And they kept coming back to the marijuana use. And I'm thinking as I'm watching the show, gosh, this kid's got a whole lot more problems than smoking a little weed. And as they went through the show and talked about his aggression, he kept saying, yes, that was when I wasn't smoking marijuana. Since I've smoked marijuana, I've become less aggressive. I'm able to take the edge off, like you were saying.
It's hilarious how common I hear that, and yet publishing data along those lines, I just can't think of anything that's actually been published. The whole idea that you need a pharmacological intervention for aggression is certainly up for a challenge. The key issue here, too, is, I loved Dr. Phil when he first came on, but the show's kind of spun out of control. Here's somebody with a history of aggression in his family, so of course he's aggressive, and my wife's lab actually does tons and tons of work on this, where people basically get aggression modeled as a way to solve problems, and then, of course, they can't help but turn to it when they get frustrated or upset in other ways. And as we all know, marijuana can decrease upset and frustration and things along those lines. But again, it wouldn't be our treatment of choice. We do discover that, learning stress reduction, altering cognitions and thoughts so that you end up seeing things in a way that doesn't often blame people or assume that they're being hostile towards you tends to decrease hostility later on down the line. But the drama of a family and one kid getting, picked on because his aggressive acts happen to be even loosely related to marijuana use, it's unparalleled.
Well, after all these weeks of speaking with you, I think I've learned one thing about a lot of these studies is the lack of causality. They just bring up the fact that, these people that have X symptom tested positive for marijuana, all that's proving is the fact that there's a lot of people that smoke marijuana. Some people wear white cotton T-shirts who are aggressive. It doesn't prove causality.
It's funny because they do this in the literature on positive effects as well, and I have to be equally critical. So a lot of people say, marijuana increases creativity, and in fact, we don't have data to support that either. It's not that marijuana makes people more creative. It's just a whole lot of creative people happen to smoke. So again, I want to emphasize that we need longitudinal data to make these kinds of things happen. And, as those studies slowly but surely come out, I think we're going to see this time and again these aggression, ideas go all the way back to, Marco Polo's time. So we clearly have a whole lot of years to dispute. But as the data come out time and again, I think people will be able to say, look, it's not just me. There are scientists saying marijuana does not cause aggression. Let's move on to other arguments.
Well, I sure hope we can get some grant money to study more of these positive effects. I remember the comedian Bill Hicks once said something about taking all of your music CDs, and I'll take all the ones that were written by people that smoked marijuana. You can have the rest. Maybe that's our study about marijuana and creativity.
That's as good a data set as any in some ways, and Bill Hicks was a splendid entertainer. I got to say he's sorely missed.
Yeah, we'll keep the Grateful Dead and Jimi Hendrix. You can have the Perry Como. Well, thank you, Dr. Earlywine, for joining us again. Dr. Earlywine joins us every Wednesday here on the Daily Audio Stash for Cannabis Science, and really want to emphasize that there's a lot of good studies out there that show the truth about marijuana, and you can ask Dr. Earlywine your questions at 420research@gmail.com. We use a lot of your questions for the subjects of our discussions. And Dr. Earlywine, thanks again for joining us here on the Stash.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, and you're enjoying NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Please take a moment right now to support this organization by donating online.
Cannabis, pot,
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana,
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
don't think you smoked marijuana,
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
or you used to smoke marijuana,
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take the time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. It's time for our musical break here on the Stash, and well, if you love Joni Mitchell or Tori Amos, you'll love today's musical hit from Mudville. The track is called Stoned, and it's a beautiful, haunting song with a dreamlike quality that will soothe you through the middle of the week. Vocalist and songwriter Marilyn Carino and producer and bassist Benny Cha-Cha from New York have been creating music for the past 12 years. This song grooves me to my soul. You'll enjoy Stoned like only a cannabis community member can. Learn more about Marilyn and Benny and hear more of their amazing music at their website, mudvillemusic.com. You can also get more information from our website at stash.normal.org, where you can find an MP3 download of this song. This is Mudville and Stoned.
From my eye in the sky I see everything. Lay them down on the new world. I see wind and water, pound of powder, everyone's skin. Where roofs are raised to health traitors who long to see their real names. slinky slow. A fulsome ride to where we may go. Chariot to ride me home. Whiskey, water, flow and stone. Close to me as you can be is nowhere. Very long as you want it to, the stop of your hair will rise. Occasionally the way lights are so beyond your eyes. Cash cows watching the rows, marking their walls so dutifully. Shoot as they pray for people there. It's in order to open a can of your wishes, breathe in your blues. Bird lives like a bird, seed like a tree, and I'm a hammer. We could steal. Cadillac is slinky slow. A fulsome ride to where we may go. Chariot to ride me home. Whiskey, water flowing.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org. Going around the country getting the reports from the Global Marijuana March that took place this last weekend, and we turn to the Big Apple, New York City, and Rob Robinson, who's the Executive Director of New York NORML. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, tell us all about your Global Marijuana March. About how many people did you have show up?
Well, it started out small. We were in Tompkins Square Park in New York City. I would say we had a couple hundred people at the beginning of the march. Once the march started, we picked people up along the whole way. It was a long march, something like a little over 38 blocks. And we had easily over 1,000 people by the time we got to our final destination, which was the United Nations.
What was the reaction from people on the street as you came by?
Tourists were surprised, and I think most of the locals were excited. The fact that our numbers near tripled, if not more, showed the support of the people in the city.
That's excellent. And how about the local news coverage? Was it favorable?
What coverage we did get was somewhat favorable. Generally, the coverage that we get is pretty minimal because it is a big city with a lot going on. We did seem to get some local footage that and some alternative media that really gave us some great footage.
How many of the people that were marching there today were aware of that new report by Dr. Levine on the racial disparity in marijuana arrests in New York? Was that a big subject for your speakers today?
It was a big subject. Racism seemed to be a big topic. Everybody seemed to be talking about, from that report all the way to Sean Bell. People were definitely thinking about race.
Was the Sean Bell case in any way around? Did it have anything to do with marijuana in any way, or was it just the police shooting?
Well, one of the justifications that we've heard on the news that the police used was that they smelled marijuana, and that the whole group of Sean Bell's friends may have been using marijuana, somehow giving a justification for them to open fire.
Now, some folks outside of the New York metro area might not know too much about the Sean Bell case. Can you give us a quick little thumbnail description of what happened?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Sean Bell was it was his bachelor party. It was the day before his wedding. He was with 4 of his friends, and they were in a car. The story at this point only comes from the police, and it's said that he didn't stop when he was told to stop. They were definitely unarmed. 50 shots were fired at their car. Sean Bell was killed. One police even had to reload his gun after 30 shots.
Well, we did a story on the Sean Bell case earlier in the Daily Audio Stash. I'll provide a link back to that up on our blog at stash.normal.org. Rob Robinson from New York NORML, thanks for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash. Time now to go down to the Lone Star State. We're getting reports from all around the country on the global marijuana march that took place this last Saturday. I'm joined by Josh Schimberg, the president and executive director of Texas NORML. How you doing today, Josh?
Doing well, Russ. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Now, which city are you in there for Texas NORML? It's a big state.
Texas NORML is based out of Austin, which is where the capital of the state is at.
Okay, so Austin, Texas, and so I imagine you guys had a pretty good turnout for your global marijuana march on Saturday?
Yeah, we had probably between 300 and 500, and that was throughout the entire day. We did sort of an all-day mini festival type thing here in Austin. So it was a really good turnout. We didn't have any set numbers expected, but we did spend a lot of time advertising for it, promoting it, and getting the word out to people here in town.
Well, that's great. Now, as far as this rally and your protest goes, what sort of reaction did you get from the public there in Austin?
In general, the public here is very receptive to our message. It's pretty amazing. When we were doing the march all up to the Capitol, we probably 1 out of every 3 cars that drove by us while we were marching down the street would honk their horns, wave their hands out the window, and shout something in support of what we were doing. So it's really good to see that kind of reception here in the Lone Star State.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, did you get picked up on any local news coverage, television, radio, newspapers?
Yes, the event was covered by the local CBS affiliate, News 42. They had a film guy out at Silker Park, which was where we had kind of the pre- and post-party of the rally. And they also had their out-in-the-field correspondent up at the Capitol to do a couple of short interviews, and they ran a story about it on their 6 and their 10 o'clock news on Saturday. And they called it, quote, the big story.
Wow, well, that's good to hear. So pretty favorable coverage. Did they employ any of that, snarky language they do sometimes when they cover these marijuana things, or did they treat it like a serious political rally?
Well, I was a little bit disappointed about the way that they covered it, in that they kind of a few of the people that they interviewed about the event weren't really the people that I thought that they should have been interviewing. Like, we had a NORML legal committee lawyer that's here in town. His name's Bruce Fox, and he gave a little speech at the Capitol, but for some reason the news station decided to not interview him and instead interview, a dreadlocked person standing over there kind of off to the side who all they could say was, I love to smoke weed every day.
It's like they're trying to reinforce a negative stereotype.
Exactly. And when it came to the medical issue, they talked about that a little bit with our PR guy. His name's Brad. They showed a snippet of him talking about the medical issue, and then at the very end of the snippet, they caught him saying something about, it's a substance that you can party with too. Click, and that was it. So it's kind of, I don't know, not to mention the fact that when they ran the story, they got his name wrong and they got my name wrong. So, we take what we can get as far as media coverage. I guess beggars can't be choosers.
Well, it's turning out better and better for us. All we got to do is just keep standing up for our rights and presenting our serious face. And sometimes it's just a matter of tracking down those cameramen and demanding to be interviewed, if anything else. Otherwise, they're going to go for the craziest shot that they can get on the 10 o'clock news if they can. Now, as far as being able to get a hold of you down there in Texas at Texas NORML, if other people listening to this podcast want to get involved, where do they go on the web? Is there a phone number they can call?
They can call me direct. My phone number is area code 512-585-3846. Online, they can find Texas NORML at www.texasnormal.org, or they can find us on MySpace at myspace.com/TexasNORML.
Josh Schimberg, President and Executive Director of Texas NORML, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks again, Russ. Appreciate it.
Reporting medical marijuana in Pennsylvania. These are Pennsylvanians for medical marijuana and the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana.
Back to the East Coast, we're going to go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania right now. We're speaking with Ken Wolski, who's the Executive Director of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, who helped coordinate the Philadelphia version of the Global Marijuana March on Saturday, along with Philly NORML. And Ken, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Well, thank you very much, Russ. It's a pleasure to be here.
So how about your march this Saturday? What kind of turnout did you have?
Well, it was excellent. It was a very spirited turnout. I didn't actually count heads, but there were, I would estimate, over 100 people there. And, they were very enthusiastic, wearing green, making a lot of noise. They marched all the way down South Street for over a mile into Head House Square in Philadelphia, where there was a rally that, we had a lot of literature and speakers and articles for sale from both Philly NORML and the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey.
Great. Now, how is the response going for the people there, the public, the general public, not part of our people, but just the general public? How do they respond to these marches and these protests?
Well, I started going to the Cures Not Wars March in New York, and there was a very different atmosphere up there several years ago with very heavy police protests. Philadelphia, I found a completely different atmosphere, Russ. The cops were very, very friendly. They were supportive. They stopped traffic. When we marched down South Street in Philadelphia, people would stop what they were doing and join us in the march. It was absolutely inspiring, some of the things that happened there, Russ.
How about the coverage in the local news media? Did you get any airtime on the local TV news?
Being part of that, I didn't really follow that. I didn't catch it. I sent out a press release from my organization to Philadelphia Inquirer and to let them know what was going on. I just haven't really seen, the press coverage for it. I know there was some press there. Usually it's the alternative papers that follow it more closely, like the City paper in New York, rather than the established media.
Sure. Now, you're in neighboring New Jersey. How is the fight for medical marijuana going in the state? Do you have a bill pending?
Yes, we have identical bills in the Senate and the Assembly here in New Jersey. The New Jersey Compassionate Use Medical Marijuana Act. It's A804 and S119 if you're writing your legislators. And, we're plugging along at it. We have more sponsors than ever before. We have 5 sponsors in the state Senate, and we have 7 sponsors in the Assembly. And the Governor Corzine said he would sign the bill if we can get it to his desk. We think we have enough votes in the Assembly. We're not sure about the Senate right now. That's pretty much the holdup. So we're plugging along. We're continuing our outreach and education efforts here in New Jersey, and we hope to turn the tide and pass this bill.
That sounds a lot like, I do a lot of these reports on these statewide initiatives and medical marijuana bills that go through, and it always seems like the House or Assembly tends to be more for it than do the Senates across the nation. I don't know why, but that just seems to be a pattern that's holding up even now in New Jersey, you're saying.
Yeah, how about that? I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not sure what the reasoning for that is either. There are fewer senators. We have 40 senators, state senators here in New Jersey, and 80 assemblymen in 40 districts. And usually the assembly, what we found when we passed the needle exchange bill here, and also the death penalty bill here in New Jersey, was that the assembly is very reluctant to act unless they have the support of the Senate. So it really seems to be the Senate that makes the decisions here legislatively in New Jersey. I'm not sure how it is around the country, but for some reason that seems to be the case here.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing a lot, too. Now, Ken, let's let everyone know how they can get involved with the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, a website or a phone number that they can reach you.
Yes. The website is www.cmmnj, as in Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey.org. We're an organization. And my telephone number is area code 609-394-2137. Email address is ohankrw@aol.com. I'm happy to hear from anyone. I do a lot of outreach both in New Jersey and nationally. Been to the Patients Out of Time conference, just got back from that in California, and the recent NORML conference in October of last year. So I do get out quite a bit, and I'm always happy to hear from anybody throughout the country.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. We've been speaking with Ken Wolski from the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, who helped participate in the Philly NORML March there in Philadelphia this last weekend. Thanks for joining us here on The Stash.
Thank you very much, Russ, for having me here.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent.
I leave today with a cannabis quote from Robert Altman, the director, who said, quote, "I was a heavy drinker, but the alcohol affected my heart rather than my liver, so I stopped. I smoke grass now. I say that to everybody because marijuana should be legalized. It's ridiculous that it isn't. If at the end of the day I feel like smoking a joint, I do it. It changes the perception of what I've been through all day." End quote. That's right, and that's why we're fighting for the end of adult marijuana prohibition, one day at a time, one listener at a time. Thanks for being a part of it. I'm Radical Russ Belville. Thanks for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.